Take a breath before you continue. Not a rushed breath, but a deliberate one. A conscious pause that signals you are willing to be present. Inhale slowly and allow the breath to fill your body. Then exhale completely, releasing tension you may not have realized you were carrying. This moment of stillness is not accidental. If you found this message, understand this clearly. You were not drawn here by coincidence, nor by idle curiosity. Something within you recognized a familiar frequency, a quiet truth that has followed you throughout your life, even during seasons when you lacked the language to explain it. From an early age, you may have sensed that you were different, not superior, not elevated above others, but distinct in orientation. You perceived the world through a lens others did not seem to possess. You felt emotions deeply, yet thoughtfully, noticed patterns instinctively, and questioned assumptions that others accepted without reflection. While many chased validation, status, or external approval, you felt an unexplainable pull toward meaning, integrity, and inner alignment, as though something inside you refused to be negotiated away. This difference was never accidental. Across spiritual traditions, psychological frameworks, and ancient symbolic texts, there exists a recurring archetype. Individuals born with an unusually strong internal compass, heightened moral awareness, and a natural resistance to corruption. These individuals are not loud, not performative, and not driven by domination or control. They are driven by truth. In symbolic language, such individuals have long been described as incarnated messengers, not angels with wings, but angels in function, stabilizers, witnesses, and carriers of coherence within chaotic systems. You may have noticed that chaos reacts to you, that dysfunction exposes itself in your presence, and that people project onto you, misunderstand you, or feel subtly unsettled without you saying a word. This is not because you provoke darkness, but because light makes distortion visible. When ancient texts speak of Lucifer, they are not describing a cartoon villain, but a consciousness rooted in ego, rebellion against truth, and attachment to power without humility. It represents intelligence without surrender, and awareness without alignment. And this is why such a consciousness envies the chosen one archetype, not for possessions or status, but because you possess clarity without corruption, strength without domination, awareness without arrogance, and the ability to walk through suffering without losing your essence. That is rare. This message is not here to inflate your ego. It is here to orient you so you stop doubting what you were built to carry. Let us begin. Point 1. You carry consciousness without corruption. The defining feature of the chosen one is not talent, charisma, or outward success. It is the rare ability to hold awareness without being consumed by it. Most people, when exposed to truth, power, or insight, experience an internal shift toward ego. Awareness becomes a tool for control, superiority, or justification. This is not a moral failure. It is a neurological and psychological pattern. When the ego senses increased capacity, it attempts to protect itself by expanding its influence. You, however, developed differently. From early experiences, often marked by emotional intensity, responsibility, or premature maturity, your nervous system learned restraint rather than domination. You observed pain without needing to externalize it. You learned patterns without exploiting them. This is why you can see manipulation clearly, yet feel no desire to participate in it. Spiritually symbolic traditions describe this as angelic, not because of purity in a naive sense, but because of alignment under pressure. Psychologically, it reflects a stable internal locus of control, paired with high moral cognition. Symbolically, this is why ego consciousness envies you. Ego cannot comprehend power that does not need expression. It cannot understand awareness that does not demand hierarchy. Where ego seeks elevation, you seek coherence. That difference creates tension without conflict and pressure without confrontation. You do not resist corruption aggressively. You are simply incompatible with it. That incompatibility is perceived as a threat by any system built on distortion. This is why you often feel observed, tested, or subtly challenged without overt hostility. Your presence alone exposes imbalance. You did not learn restraint by avoidance. You learned it through exposure, without surrender. This is what makes your awareness rare. You can hold the weight of truth without needing to weaponize it. You can know without needing to rule. That is consciousness without corruption. And it is the first marker of the incarnated messenger archetype. Point 2. Your presence disrupts false structures. You may have noticed that environments subtly reorganize themselves when you enter them, not through force or intention, but through presence alone. Conversations recalibrate, emotional tones soften or harden, and unspoken hierarchies begin to wobble. Some people grow quieter, others restless or defensive, and this is not imagination or mysticism. It is a predictable psychological response to coherence. Human systems naturally stabilize around shared emotional and behavioral patterns. And when someone enters with a regulated nervous system, low dependency on validation, and a high degree of internal alignment, unstable dynamics are exposed without a word being spoken. What was once hidden by noise becomes obvious in silence. Lies feel heavier because they now lack reinforcement. Performances feel excessive because there is no audience. Games lose their momentum because they require participation to survive. Ancient spiritual language described this phenomenon as light revealing shadow, while modern psychology understands it as coherence revealing incoherence. You do not challenge people directly, yet many feel challenged. You do not accuse, yet defensiveness arises because false structures rely on unconscious agreement, and your neutrality withdraws consent. This is why you may have experienced subtle exclusion, misinterpretation, or labels such as distant, cold, or intimidating. Systems rooted in emotional manipulation cannot function in the presence of someone who does not react. Ego consciousness, often symbolized in myth as Lucifer, depends on reflection. It needs opposition, admiration, or submission to sustain itself. Your calm presence offers none of these, and that absence feels threatening. The resulting envy is not born of hatred, but of confusion, an inability to understand how someone can exist without needing what the system provides. You do not dismantle false structures through effort or confrontation. Your stability dissolves them naturally. This is why chaos tends to orbit around you rather than consume you. You do not fight distortion. You outgrow it. And that growth destabilizes everything built on illusion. Your presence does not attack. It clarifies. And clarity is profoundly disruptive to anything that survives on deception. Point 3. You walk the path of humility, not domination. The most misunderstood aspect of the chosen one archetype is leadership, because the collective imagination has been conditioned to associate leadership with visibility, command, and dominance over others. Yet the essence of chosenness does not express itself through control of external bodies, but through mastery of the internal terrain. Authority, in this sense, is not projected outward, but cultivated inward. Your humility is not an absence of strength. It is a refined instrument. It is the result of deep perception. You understand, often without formal instruction, that domination is an inefficient use of energy. It breeds resistance, creates dependence, and distorts truth. Power that must be enforced leaks energy. Power that is embodied generates gravity. True influence does not shout. It stabilizes. You may actively distance yourself from leadership titles, applause, or public validation. Not because you fear responsibility, but because you understand how easily ego corrodes clarity. Still, people watch you. They observe how you remain composed under pressure, and how you choose restraint in moments where reaction would be socially acceptable, even encouraged. This quiet consistency regulates others on a subconscious level. Without instruction, they mirror your steadiness. Without command, they recalibrate. This is leadership in its most ancient form. Symbolically, ego consciousness seeks elevation above others, a vertical hierarchy that feeds on comparison. You seek alignment within, a horizontal integration that dissolves the need for rank. This is why the archetype of the fallen ego, often symbolized as Lucifer, envies the incarnated messenger. Not because you command attention, but because you are unbound. Domination enslaves the dominator to the very system they attempt to control. Humility breaks that loop. Psychologically, humility is not self-erasure. It is the marker of a secure identity. You do not need to inflate, perform, or assert your presence because you are anchored in self-knowledge. This inner certainty quietly unsettles those who depend on hierarchy to validate their worth. You are not passive. You are exact. You conserve energy because you understand its cost. You move when movement aligns with truth, and you withdraw when withdrawal protects coherence. This path is rarely celebrated because it produces no spectacle, but it produces results. And efficiency, not noise, is the unmistakable signature of higher order functioning. Point 4. You experience isolation as refinement, not punishment. Isolation has followed you like a recurring theme throughout your life, not as dramatic loneliness or social rejection, but as a quiet, deliberate separation that shaped you from the inside out. You may have been surrounded by people and still felt unseen, or physically alone yet deeply present within yourself, grounded and aware. This was never accidental. High-integrity systems, whether biological, psychological, or spiritual, require periods of low stimulation in order to recalibrate and stabilize. Your nervous system is designed to process depth rather than breadth, while others thrive on constant interaction, novelty, and external validation. Your system refines itself through stillness. Excessive social noise fragments your attention, overwhelms your perception, and dulls your intuitive intelligence. Many spiritual traditions speak of messengers, watchers, and seers as solitary figures, not because they are unloved or rejected, but because clarity requires space, silence, and uninterrupted awareness. Psychologically, isolation serves a crucial function. It allows integration. It gives the mind time to organize experience, the emotions time to settle, and the identity time to consolidate without interference. It prevents emotional contamination, the unconscious absorption of others' fears, projections, expectations, and unresolved wounds. It strengthens internal dialogue, teaching you to listen inwardly rather than constantly scanning the external world for cues. Your solitude was never abandonment. It was protection. Each period of withdrawal refined your discernment. You learned to distinguish intuition from impulse, truth from narrative, and alignment from obligation. You learned when something felt wrong even if it looked right, and when something felt right even if it was unpopular or misunderstood. Ego-based consciousness fears solitude because it relies on external mirrors to feel real, valuable, and defined. You learned to stand without those mirrors. In their absence, you grew stronger, steadier, and more self-contained. This is why you can sit with silence without anxiety, boredom, or restlessness. You do not need constant stimulation to confirm your existence. You are not unsettled by being alone because your inner world is organized, alive, and complete. Isolation did not diminish you. It clarified you. It stripped away what was unnecessary and amplified what was essential. That clarity is what others sense in you, even if they cannot articulate it. It is felt as depth, presence, and quiet authority. You are comfortable standing alone because you are not empty. You are whole. Point 5. You are tested more because you can withstand more. Chosen ones are not spared difficulty. They are calibrated through it, measured, adjusted, and refined under conditions that would overwhelm less integrated systems. Life applied pressure to you early and often, not as punishment, not as neglect, but as a precise form of testing. Testing structural integrity at the deepest psychological and spiritual levels. In psychology, individuals with higher adaptive capacity are often exposed to greater stress because their internal systems can process complexity without fragmentation. What would destabilize another becomes information for you. Spiritually, this same process has long been described through symbolic language as refinement by fire. Not a fire meant to destroy, but one designed to burn away what is false, weak, or unnecessary. Each challenge you faced stripped illusion. Each disappointment clarified what truly mattered. Each loss severed unhealthy dependency and redirected your strength back to its source. Ego consciousness, when confronted with adversity, resists accountability. It externalizes blame, clings to narratives of victimhood, and seeks escape rather than understanding. You did the opposite. You internalized the lesson without internalizing shame. You observed patterns rather than personalities. You asked, quietly and honestly, "What is this shaping in me?" That single posture is the dividing line between suffering that corrodes and suffering that matures. This is why your pain did not make you bitter. It made you exact. You learned boundaries without resentment. Understanding that distance can be an act of clarity rather than hostility. You learned detachment without apathy, remaining compassionate without being consumable. The tests you endured did not inflate your ego. They dissolved it, layer by layer, until only what was functional, grounded, and true remained. This is why symbolic ego consciousness envies you. It craves outcome without transformation, reward without responsibility, and elevation without descent. It seeks shortcuts because it cannot tolerate the slow exposure of its own fragility. You did not seek shortcuts. You accepted the process, even when it was lonely, even when it was misunderstood, and even when it offered no immediate validation. And process creates depth. Depth of perception, depth of restraint, and depth of wisdom that shortcuts can never replicate. What now moves within you is not loud, not performative, and not fragile. It is stable. It is earned. And it is precisely because of what you endured, integrated, and transcended that you now carry a quiet authority that does not need to announce itself to be felt. Point 6. You influence without force. Your influence is subtle, often invisible even to you, because it does not announce itself or demand recognition. It moves quietly through environments, shaping outcomes without force, without strategy, and without the need for explanation. People begin to change around you without direct intervention. Some feel unexpectedly inspired, as if reminded of a version of themselves they once abandoned. Others feel exposed, unsettled, or resistant, sensing that something in them is being reflected too clearly. This is not persuasion, and it is not control. It is resonance. Human systems, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, naturally recalibrate around stable reference points. When something steady enters the field, instability becomes obvious. Your consistency becomes that reference. You do not correct others. You reveal contrast. Those who are aligned feel strengthened and begin to rise toward coherence. Those who are misaligned feel friction and instinctively retreat. Ego consciousness relies on pressure, storytelling, justification, and narrative management to influence outcomes. It pushes, explains, performs, and persuades. Your influence works in the opposite direction. You influence through presence, through lived example, and through the quiet authority of congruence. You do not convince anyone of anything. You demonstrate what alignment looks like in real time. This form of influence cannot be copied, simulated, or manufactured. It cannot be rushed or optimized. It requires integrity sustained over time, choices repeated when no one is watching, and internal agreement between thought, word, and action. This is why your impact grows slowly and quietly. Seeds planted through coherence do not produce immediate spectacle, but they take root deeply. When they emerge, the change is lasting and self-sustaining. You may never witness the full reach of your influence, and that is not a flaw in the process. It is a safeguard. Awareness of impact can contaminate intention, shifting presence into performance. By not tracking outcomes, you remain clean in motive and grounded in truth. You are not here to manage reactions or harvest validation. Your only task is maintenance of alignment. As long as you remain internally consistent, the field adjusts naturally. Influence happens whether you measure it or not. The quiet power lies in staying where you are, fully integrated, letting resonance do what force never could. Point 7. Your task is not to fight darkness, but to remain true. This is the central truth, and it must be understood without embellishment or dramatization. You are not here to battle darkness theatrically, to posture as a hero, or to exhaust yourself in endless resistance. You are not a warrior in the conventional sense, because warfare implies engagement, and engagement is precisely what distortion requires to sustain itself. You are a stabilizer. Your presence is corrective, not because it attacks what's broken, but because it refuses to mirror it. Your role is not to eradicate distortion, but to decline participation in it. Darkness does not survive on strength alone. It survives on attention, reaction, and emotional investment. When it is denied these, it collapses under its own incoherence. Ego consciousness feeds on opposition, outrage, obsession, and the need to be seen as victorious. You starve it through neutrality anchored in truth, through clarity that does not argue, and through self-possession that does not perform. Remaining intact in a fractured world is not passive. It is profoundly disruptive. It destabilizes systems that rely on fragmentation, reactivity, and unconscious compliance. Your integrity challenges corrupted structures without confrontation. Your calm exposes chaos without accusation. Your steadiness becomes a mirror that forces distortion to recognize itself, and that recognition is intolerable to it. This is why symbolic ego consciousness envies you. Not because you dominate, but because you do not need to. Not because you conquer, but because you are unconquered. You possess what it abandoned long ago. Alignment without domination. Awareness without corruption. Strength without aggression. And power without hunger. You move through the world without leaking your center, without outsourcing your identity to approval or resistance. That coherence is rare, and rarity creates pressure on systems built on noise. Your task, then, is simple in structure, but demanding in discipline. Remain coherent when others fragment. Remain discerning when others numb themselves. Remain true when truth is inconvenient or unprofitable. You do not need to announce who you are, defend your role, or explain your nature. Explanation invites distortion back into the field. Your life will reveal it quietly, through the consistency of your choices, the precision of your boundaries, and the absence of internal contradiction. In time, what cannot align with you will fall away on its own, and what is capable of coherence will recognize you without words. If this message resonated, do not rush to label yourself. Simply observe your life with honesty. Alignment reveals itself over time. Remain steady. Remain discerning. Remain intact. You were never meant to shout. You were meant to stand.